Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out to Football Fridays at the Eck, and thanks for being here for a very special edition of Catching Up With. Our guest today was an All-American and a national champion at Notre Dame. He was an NFL MVP and is a member of both the Pro Football and the College Football Hall of Fames. He served for more than 20 years as a Supreme Court Justice in the state of Minnesota, and he is the founder of the Page Education Foundation. Please give a round of applause to the Honorable Alan Page.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your warm welcome.
Well, Judge, we want to get to all of your accomplishments on the football field and in your legal career, but we always like to start off at the beginning on Catching Up With. So where did you grow up?
Canton, Ohio.
And I know you've said in the past, like many folks here, I'm sure, that your two biggest, most important role models were your parents growing up. What values did they instill in you that were most kind of critical to your success in your life?
One was the importance of education. I could hear them saying, if you want to have a better life than we've had, then you have to be educated. And they reinforced that time and time again, both in word and by the seat of my pants. The second thing that I think they instilled, that they wouldn't have said it this way, but they made sure that I understood that it was important to seek excellence. They would say, you know, whatever you want to do in life, that's fine with us, but do it as well as you can. Be the best that you can be. That is something that really stuck with me. They used to say, you know, if you want to be a garbage collector, be the best garbage collector you can be. If you want to be a lawyer, be the best lawyer that you can be. And what they were really saying was seek excellence. One of the things that over time I noticed, first in the football field, but really in life generally, is there's a desire to want to win. Wanting to win and trying to win is not the same thing as seeking excellence. Is not the same as trying to be as good as you can be. And generally, when all you want to do is win, when that's foremost in your mind, is you end up playing at the level of the competition. When you play at the level of the competition, it's pretty tough to be your highest and best self. And so I was pretty fortunate, blessed really, to have parents that instilled that in me. And finally, the thing that, and the most important thing that I got from my parents and my family was love. They loved me, and they made it clear that they loved me.
Speaking of seeking excellence, one of your many pursuits where you certainly achieved excellence was on the football field. At what age did you start playing football?
I was a ninth grader. Before that, I hadn't had much interest in football, even though Canton, Ohio is pretty well known for its football players. I just didn't have any interest in it. But my brother went out for football, and you know, the little sibling rivalry, I thought I would give it a try. Turns out I had some aptitude for it, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, you had obviously an incredible career at Central Catholic High School in Canton. When it came to your senior year, you were a highly sought-after recruit. I know your high school coach had left the year before and become an assistant at Michigan State, and Michigan State recruited you heavily, so did just about everybody else. What made you choose Notre Dame for college?
Well, when I made the final decision, I was down to 3 schools: Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Purdue. And evaluating those 3 schools, I concluded that they were all good. I could get a good education at any one of them. Indeed, you know, you get the education you work for. But what I concluded was that beyond my time at Notre Dame, the values, the alumni association, the future would be better and brighter if I ended up going to Notre Dame. And that was ultimately the deciding factor, because weighing everything else, they were pretty equal.
When you arrived on campus in the fall of 1963, I know there were not many black students at Notre Dame. There were, I think for a time, you were the only black player on the football team. Was that difficult for you?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I'm not sure I know how to answer it. Being away from home, being in new circumstances around new people, that was difficult. You know, I suppose part of it, although I had gone to the Catholic high school, which was predominantly white, in some respects, you know, it was lonely in that sense, but the loneliness and the longing went beyond that. And finally, while my time here was difficult for a whole host of reasons, something I learned, you know, think about the cold. When it's, you know, in Minnesota it gets to be 10 below zero, 10 days in a row, and it's you kind of don't like it. You kind of dislike it. But you survive it, and how do you survive it? Because you know it is what it is. And the reality was that being one of a few African Americans on this campus, it was what it was. And I didn't spend a lot of time dwelling on that fact. I mean, the other thing is, I knew what I was getting into when I came here.
Sure. At the time, freshmen were not eligible to play during their first year here. So you were not on the field in 1963, which was a difficult year for the Irish. Then your first season playing was 1964. A new coach arrives from Northwestern by the name of Parseghian, and you know, one of the greatest turnarounds in college football history followed. What was the most important thing you learned from Coach Parseghian?
Well, first of all, I had the good fortune to have the opportunity to visit with Coach Parseghian yesterday. Special time with he and his wife Katie. It was great. The best thing that I learned I think it was the very first team meeting we had for spring practice in 1964. We're there down at the Rock, I believe, in one of the rooms down there. He's got the chalkboard up, and he's going to talk to us about the coming year. One of the first things he says is, I want to talk about my philosophy of football. And he says, the game is really simple. It's about two things. If you do these two things, good things will happen. And then he said, those two things are, one, field position, and two, possession. Right? Field position and possession. If you maintain field position and possession of the football, you're going to win far more than you lose. And that was a good thing to understand about the game of football. Before that, I was just, you know, a young kid throwing my body around, not having any sense of the rhyme or reason to why I was doing it, other than, you know, the ball's there and go get it. But all of a sudden, it was, oh, yeah. So then you break it down to what are the things you do to maintain field position and possession. Looking back on that in retrospect, it was sort of earth-moving then. When I look back on it, it was rather life-altering, because it applies to more than just the football field. What are the fundamental things you need to do to work through life? Take those, and if you do them, good things will happen. And so I like I say, it was life altering, and it's made possible, and certainly become part of what allowed me to do all the things I have done.
Well, good things certainly happened on the football field those next few years. 1964 was an incredible year, and then 2 years later, your senior season, 1966, you're one of the star players that helps lead Notre Dame to the national championship.
I should note that in 1964 we were about a minute and 27 seconds shy of a national championship.
That's true. Some questionable calls from the referees in that game too, if I remember. When you look back on the '66 season, what's your fondest memory?
I think I look back on the '66 season, quite frankly, all of the seasons that I played football. It's the people I played with. I mean, that's what's important in the end. I mean, the game itself, it's entertainment. People watch it. You do it. You try to be as good as you can be. But in the end, it's the relationships you develop and the people you get to know that matter.
You said earlier your parents instilled in you the value of education, the importance of education. What did you study as an undergraduate at Notre Dame?
Political science. And they instilled that in me. I didn't always take advantage of what they instilled in me. I look back on my academic career and it could have been a great deal more. That said, I should also say youth is wasted on the young. I figured it out when I got to law school. And not only did I learn something in law school, I loved the process of learning and fell in love with the process of learning. And it's something that has been a part of my life since then. I was learning before, but the process, I didn't care much for. Once I fell in love with the process, things really took off.
You attended law school and graduated while you were an NFL player, which is obviously very unusual for NFL players. What led to that decision to start attending law school while you were still playing in the NFL?
Well, ultimately the skills of a defensive tackle, no matter how good you are, don't transfer to much off the football field. There isn't much call for, tackling people and knocking them down and that sort of thing. And with a wife and 4 children and a long work life ahead of me, it was time to start preparing for the future. I had, true confessions here. I'm a law school graduate. I'm also a law school dropout. 1968, I enrolled at night school in St. Paul, Minnesota, William Mitchell College of Law, and lasted about 3 weeks. I was in so far over my head after the first couple of days, it took me another 2.5 weeks to drop out. That's how bad it was. I wasn't as focused as I could have been. I wasn't as committed as I could have been. Second time around, I played football for then 9 years. Quite frankly, this will be, hope the lightning doesn't strike. I was bored out of my mind as a football player. By then I had had 4 years of high school, been here for 4 years, played 8.5, 9 years professionally, and I have a very low boredom quotient. And I hadn't done everything you could do on a football field, but I had done most of them. And it was time for me to do something to allow me to use my head for something other than a place to, keep the helmet and as a battering ram. And law school provided that. I loved every minute of it. You'll hear lawyers say, I hated law school. Not me. As hard as it was, as difficult as it was, I loved every minute of it.
You may have grown bored of football while you were playing the NFL, but it didn't show on the field. You have really one of the most distinguished resumes in NFL history. You were the first defensive player to win the league MVP, and in 1988 you were inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well,
Now,
one of the things I learned is you can do two things at one time. Even things that, maybe you're bored with.
right. When you were enshrined in the Hall of Fame in your hometown of Canton, most players, when they go into the Hall of Fame, they use their speaking opportunity to reflect back on their career, talk mostly about football. You chose a different, really topic for your address. What did you talk about and why?
I talked about the education of young children, particularly young children of color. I grew up in a community that overemphasized, at least in my view, athletic performance and underemphasized academic performance. To me, the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can be a good athlete and be a good student. Indeed, being a good student makes you a better athlete. And it was important to me to take the opportunity to use that occasion to sort of expand how we look at athletes and to really try to begin to change and impact some of the disparities that we see in academic performance between African Americans, Latinos, and our white population. I've had more honors than I can begin to count. And I don't say that to suggest that I wasn't honored by being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's a pretty special thing. But to me, there had to be more to it than simply another recognition for something that I had done 6 years in the past.
And so that same year, you and your wife, Diane, launched the Page Education Foundation.
Yes.
What is the mission of the foundation, and what have the results been?
The mission of the foundation is to encourage, motivate, and assist young men and women of color pursue education beyond high school. We do that two ways. One, by providing financial assistance to those young men and women in their pursuit of post-secondary education. Our goal is to pull people along, not to filter them out. We call them Page Scholars. They're all in Minnesota. They go to all, with the exception of 40, and those 40 are here or have attended here at the University of Notre Dame. But they attend public universities and colleges, private universities and colleges, vocational technical schools, community colleges, degree programs, under the view that, not everybody wants to be a lawyer. Not everybody needs to be a doctor. We need electricians and plumbers and people who can do all sorts of things. We provide them grants, and in exchange for those grants, we require that they go back into the community where they come from, back into the community where they're going to school and work with young children, kindergarten through 8th grade, specifically in the area of education, sending those young children the strong, clear message that education is a tool that anyone can use to achieve whatever their hopes and dreams are. They do that by both word and by deed. Those young children get to see somebody who looks like them, who maybe comes from their neighborhood, who maybe has some shared experience, somebody they can relate to, using education in a way that maybe they haven't seen before. Over the years, that first year we had 10 Page Scholars. This year we have, I believe it's 535. Over time we've had more than 6,500, each one of them spending 50 hours an academic year working with young children, changing the future. Our motto is creating heroes through education and service. And for me, those 6,500 young men and women are my heroes. They're the ones who are, through their efforts, are changing the future. Not only changing the future for themselves, not only changing the future for the young children that they work with, but changing the future for all of us, making this world a better place. And I couldn't be more proud of what they do. We've raised and spent in support of the foundation's efforts more than 14, I believe it's $1 million since we began. As you can imagine, giving out, and our grants range in amount up to about $2,500 renewable per academic year, based on whether the school will have them back and whether they complete their service to children. You know, we look at athletes like me and put people like me on a pedestal, treat us as heroes, role models. But the fact is that we're influenced by those that we can reach out and touch. And as popular and as noted as I may be, I can only reach so many people. We've been able to expand that reach by 6,500. And I'm pretty proud of what they do.
Yeah, you should be. You practiced law. You started practicing law after you retired from the NFL, and then in 1992 you were elected to the Minnesota State Supreme Court.
Yes.
What inspired you to run for the highest court in the state, and what did you enjoy most about the job?
Well, I'll answer the second part of that first. There wasn't anything that I didn't enjoy. I loved every aspect of it, every moment of it, from the day I walked in the door to the day I left. I was excited and thrilled to have had the opportunity. What made me think that I was qualified to serve on the court? I suppose it was my ginormous ego. But as I grew and developed as a lawyer, it occurred to me that I had spent a lot of time struggling to figure out what case law, the cases that I was reading, what they were trying to say. And I thought, you know, that ego of mine said, there's got to be a way to write opinions so that people who use them, which is the reason they get written, can pick it up and understand it without having to struggle so much. And I thought, not only that, but what appellate court judges do, not trial court judges, but appellate court judges do, fits my interests, fits my skills and abilities, and I thought I would like to have the opportunity to do that. Thank goodness the people of Minnesota believed in me, gave me that opportunity, and I am forever grateful.
You mentioned earlier you've gotten so many accolades throughout the years. This weekend, the Monogram Club is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and as part of that celebration, the club will be awarding you its highest honor, the Moose Krause Distinguished Service Award.
They awarded it earlier this afternoon.
They did earlier this.
And I should say, as I noted, I have received a lot of awards and recognition and accolades. They had me in tears. It was that moving. It was pretty special.
You've accomplished so much in so many different walks of life over the course of your life. When you look back on it all, what are you most proud of?
I don't look back that way. I'm one of my faults, and there are many, but we're not going to go into those. One of my faults is to use the rear view mirror only for the purpose of going forward. And so I tend not to look back. I like to look forward, and the real question is, what am I going to do in the future? And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. But, I've had a lot of good fortune. I've been privileged, and it seems to me that those of us who have been privileged not only have the opportunity, but I believe the obligation to work to make this world a better place, to help those who are less fortunate, to help those who have not had the opportunities that I've had. And so when I stop and think about the past, the only thing that comes up is, what are you going to do in the future?
Well, you certainly have done so much to help the less fortunate through the Page Education Foundation and so many other avenues. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I'm going to bring up Dolly Duffy, the Executive Director of the Alumni Association.
It's a privilege to stand on the stage with you. I had the great pleasure of meeting with Justice Page earlier in the week, and it will long go down for me as one of the greatest meetings that I've had since I got here to Notre Dame. You represent so much about what is good at Notre Dame, and so we just want to say thank you. We have a small gift, and while you never should tell what's in a gift before you give it, I'm going to do it anyway because my mom and dad aren't here.
Well, if you pass it over, then you can say you've given it to me.
Okay, great. It's a book about Father Hesburgh's life, a limited edition, and I think of all the people at Notre Dame, he was so proud of you and everything that you did. Thank you.
He was proud of me, and I am more than honored. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Justice Page.
Thank you.